What's going on, guys? My name is Steve Oatley. This little brief freight show is called 5 Minutes of Freight. It's where we try to talk about some of the news stories of the morning in 5 minutes or less. This show is brought to you by Freight Broker Live and Ascend TMS, the nation's leading TMS system out there. Without further ado, we'll jump right into it. So, in our daily coronavirus update, there are now over 2 million confirmed cases worldwide with 128,000 deaths and over 192,000, or I'm sorry, 492,000 people who have recovered from this virus to date. Worldwide, in the United States, we have 614,643 confirmed cases, 26,112 confirmed deaths and 38,820 confirmed recovered. This is by a massive jump in the state of New York yesterday, putting their totals over 10,000 deaths, 203,000 total cases. They've basically they added 3,700 people that had previously died, were not tested for COVID, but likely died because of the COVID exposure. So they added those to their deaths, which put them over 10,000 deaths just in New York alone. So that is pretty gnarly. It's a lot of people that are passing away. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's a pandemic, whatever. It's a lot of people have died. So keep that in the back of your head. Our first news story that we're going to talk about today is Smithfield Foods. And again, if anyone doesn't know, I wrote an article the other day about Smithfield Foods, a Sioux, South Dakota meat packing. Actually, they're the nation's largest pork producer. In this one facility alone, produces 4 to 5% of the nation's pork. Uh, you know, nation's pork that are sold at stores and restaurants and all that stuff. At any rate, this location is closed indefinitely after over 430. Now, my original article 2 days ago, they had 238. The article that was a couple of days before that about Smithfield, before it became like big news, that one had, I don't know, 80. Now they're up to over 430 people at this one location have tested positive for COVID 19. That's a big deal. What's a bigger deal is now this story is getting nationwide attention, not just because of the COVID crisis and so many people have had it. It's more getting attention because of a statement that its CEO and president Kenneth Sullivan said. Um, and it's very important. You know, the closure of this facility, combined with a growing list of other protein plants that have shuttered across the nation, is pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. A CEO of a big company saying that, obviously media panicked. And so everybody, it was on the Today Show, it's on every single news channel. Are we going to have a meat shortage? It's just another thing that's freaking everybody out. Is it a possibility? It could be. I don't know. Smithfield isn't the only one that's closed. Cargill has closed a plant in Hazleton, Pennsylvania after 130 people have tested positive. One person has passed away because of it. JBS has closed a plant in Greeley, or actually, they've reduced production at a plant in Greeley, Colorado, after 43 people tested positive. 14 are hospitalized and two deaths in that one location from COVID 19. But they closed it temporarily to, uh, sterilize the location. But when they reopened, they couldn't get enough people to actually come in and staff it. So they had to reduce production to incorporate the immense amount of people that just didn't go to work. Um, Smithfield Foods has 30 different locations. They've temporarily closed a bunch of different locations here and there. Um, and because of, they got to test it. People are testing positive, so they got to quarantine. And Tyson has closed a couple of plants temporarily as they do cleaning. It's This story is kind of spread out, and it's become a big deal. Smithfield today announced $100 million in bonuses for employees who are working through this, which is quite impressive. So Smithfield Foods announced yesterday, that they will provide 100 million responsibility bonus to all the hourly production and distribution center team members. The 100 million responsibility bonus, named for Smithfield's permanent guiding principle, is on top of a previous $20 million commitment by the company. Employees who miss work due to COVID-19 exposure or diagnosis will receive the responsibility bonus. There's 40,000 workers. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. It's a big step for a company that is thinking that there's going to be a meat shortage, to come out and make sure that they take care of their employees. So I applaud them. Thank a food service worker, just like their hashtag says. And it's in my article as well. Also yesterday, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced 10 billion in relief for America's airports. This is a big deal because they literally gave money to every single airport out there. Some of the largest, over 300 million to Los Angeles Airport. I think over 300 million to Atlanta's airport. 150 million, over 150 million, I believe, to San Francisco Airport. So I put out the article there. It's pretty important. Secretary Elaine Chao said the 10 million in emergency resources will help fund the continued operation of our nation's airport during this crisis and save workers' jobs. Again, domestic flight travel is down to a whopping 4% of what it usually is. So it's a big deal. Under the airport program guidelines, primary commercial service airports more than 10,000 annual passenger boardings will receive additional funds based on the number of annual boardings in a similar way to how they currently receive IAP entitlement funds. All commercial service airports will receive funds based on the number of passengers that board the aircraft there, the amount of debt the airport has, and the amount of money the airport has in reserves. And general aviation airports will receive funds based on their airport categories, such as national, regional, local, basic, or unclassified. It's a pretty big deal. The money's going out, and this is just 2 weeks after the president signed the CARES Act, so that's a pretty big deal. In some better news, one of the world's largest cargo ships is coming to the port of Oakland, I believe tomorrow. It's currently en route, or if it's departed Southern California, it was in Southern California, picking up a bunch of empty containers to try to move them around. And now it's going to the port of Oakland. It's going to load up some more empty containers and it's going to load up some freight and go. What's crazy about this thing is it's massive. It's called the MSC Anna, and it's a 1,312-foot long container ship, and it's the largest boat ever to hit the port of Oakland. The second largest boat previously, before this one hits, the second largest one was the CMA Benjamin Franklin, which came to Oakland in 2016, which held 18,000 containers. The MSC Anna holds over 19,000 20-foot containers. That is a lot of freight. It's a lot of freight. I know a lot of people said, "Oh, they're not going to be able to get loaded or offloaded. Nobody's working at the ports." Yeah, well, there's not a lot of inbound, outbound traffic at this point. So hopefully, this will kind of kick it. This comes years and years after the U.S. Army. Well, years and years of efforts by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers finished dredging 870 acres of the bay floor, cleaning a 50-foot deep channel leading massive container ships into the 50-foot berths, according to the port. It's a pretty interesting story because I didn't realize how much goes into guiding and the pilots and all the tugboats and the pilot boats and all that have to actually guide this thing in because they actually take control of the boat out in the bay and steer it into the dock because it's such a massive undertaking just to get these boats in and out of these ports. So that was a pretty cool story, and which I figured I'd talk about. And then one article I wrote yesterday, which is done pretty well online, and I hope that you guys read it. The title is "In Very Uncertain Times, These Companies Prove They Are Ready for the Challenge." We in freight media and media in general are so focused on the negative in the industry. And I know a lot of times I say I don't want to talk about the negative of the industry. So I reached out to a bunch of friends via LinkedIn, company owners, executives within freight brokerages and software companies and factoring, and just to get some insight on how they're dealing with transitioning from to a work from home scenario. And some of them have really, really made interesting. I don't know what the right word is. Interesting steps in what this is going to do to their current business. Some are looking at transitioning possibly to a more remote workforce in the future when this is all done, just because of how seamless it's being or how seamless it's going and how they're actually being quite productive. Some of the companies featured, of course, Ascend TMS, the nation's leading TMS service, uh, Big Truck Logistics, Shipwell, OTR Capital, BMAC Logistics, Custom Pro Logistics. So make sure you check out that article. It's on the website under featured. It's or you could just search. It's in very uncertain times. These companies prove they are ready for the challenge. I'm also going to start resharing good articles over the course of the weekend because I'm not writing a lot on the weekends. So that way you're able to see it. This has been 5 minutes of freight. Don't know how long it's been. I forgot to put the timer up. Whatever. Make sure you tune in today at 2 o'clock for a live episode of Freight Broker Live where we talk about the market. See you guys later.